Just because you are not familiar or comfortable with the version of yourself that you are at this moment, it doesn't mean that you're lost. It seems like there's not a lot of people out there talking about the uncomfortability that comes with transformation. So let's talk about it. What is up, you guys? It's Mercedes, and welcome back to Unapologetically Mercy. On this channel, we talk all things self-love, self-development, astrology, holistic wellness, DIYs, sometimes a little bit of everything else in between. In this video, we are going to talk about what identity loss looks like and feels like, how to normalize the experience of going through the transformation, as well as talking briefly about 3 phases of transformation. And if you are trying to better figure out what phase of your own self transformation that you're on, this video is for you. Let's get into it. When one is deciding that they are no longer wanting to be the version of themselves because the version that they are is no longer in alignment with their ideas or their values, or one is very clear and aware that if I continue to operate in the way that I am moving, I'm going to continue to receive the same results. And there's no way I'm going to align with my dream life or the opportunities or the blueprint that I have for my dream life if I continue to move the way that I am moving. And in that moment or in that phase, you are shifting, you are knowing that there needs to be identity shift. There needs to be an identity change. And in order for the identity to change, one must grieve and mourn the loss of the identity that they are at that moment. And before we talk about what identity loss looks like, I want you to be so proud of yourself for realizing that the version of yourself that you are, even if you don't even know who she is anymore, even if you felt like you lost yourself along the way through different life experiences or traumatic things that might have happened to you that has made you feel like you don't know who you are anymore, that realization, that awareness is the first step to embarking on your self-love journey and embarking on your self-transformation healing journey. And to even have that aha moment, I am so proud of you for having that awareness, for you to allow yourself to sit with that feeling and acknowledging that I have to change if I want my life to change. I can no longer continue to play the victim. I have to change. I need to work on myself internally so that it spews out on the external, and I can align with the things that I say that I desire, that are a part of my dream life. And also defining what that is if you have no idea what that looks like. Cool. So now let's talk about what identity loss looks like and feels like. One, it could look like you outgrowing people. So this could be, long time friends that you've had from elementary school, middle school, high school, college, whatever the case might be, or different family members that you used to be tight with that you never would have imagined or never would have expected y'all would have been distancing yourself, or that the relationship was stalling out, or that it's just not giving what it used to give. When you have become aware that a relationship within your life has shifted and changed in a way that you never would expect it, it's so hard sometimes to accept that it's not a bad thing. Just because you might not feel like you're on the same path, or that you and someone aren't close like you used to be, that there's any beef or any bad blood. It just means there's time for a shift within your life, and maybe they're content with continuing to move the way they have been moving, but you no longer are, and you want different. And when it becomes clear that you two are in alignment with certain things, it's okay to step back and to protect yourself. It's okay for you to be like, okay, maybe I need to reevaluate our friendship, our relationship, our partnership, whatever the case might be. You know what I'm saying? I use myself for an example. There's a lot of family members that I used to be close with growing up that I know I am no longer close with. I might see them in passing for certain family events or every now and again, but I don't surround myself, or I'm not in their same space like I used to when I was growing up, because I know at this phase in my life, and knowing that what they showed me is not what I want my life to look like, I had to step back. But at the time, But at the time, it was very saddening to me that, like, oh my God, how could I tell my best friend no? How could I tell one of my favorite aunts or my favorite cousins like no, or just not showing up or not answering or becoming more vague with my answers when they ask me how I'm doing or what I've got going on to protect what I've got going on, protect my boundaries, protecting my peace, protecting my well-being from all the healing journey work that I have done. And you have to grieve the fact that these relationships are no longer the same. Grief is not just when someone physically leaves this earthly plane. Grief comes into play when one reality or one way of how life used to be for you is no longer the same, and you have to adjust to that change. And it is normal and it is okay for you to feel sad and to grieve that loss, because going forward, even if you and that person, even if you still have that person in your life, things will not go back to where they were before, because you have already dedicated and decided that you're no longer going back to that version of yourself. You've already decided you've already decided that you're tapping into a new version of yourself, which requires something you to do for the first time, something new, something outside of your comfort zone. And once you've come to certain realizations, especially on your self-love journey, or just when it comes to just truths, there's no way that you can go back after you know what you know. It just is what it is. Another way that one can identify what identity loss looks like is feeling disconnected. Not only could you feel disconnected from the people that you have outgrown, but you might also be feeling disconnected from the different environments that you have been so used to being in, whether it's church, whether it's a job that you've been at for 10, 15 years, that like you've gotten comfortable in being in that space and being that role, or elevating yourself in that company that is no longer serving you. You feel like you're no longer getting the value, your soul isn't in it anymore. You feel more drained, and you don't feel like it just brings you the happiness that I might once did. Same thing with a family member, same thing with just any other environments that you might have been around. Whatever the feeling that I used to give you, feeling happiness, that joy, like I'm in a safe space, I feel excited, and all these different things no longer hits the same. That's how you know that you're shifting. That's how you know you're in between who you used to be and who you are becoming. Because when you are when you are feeling the disconnect from different environments, from different people, that's your indicator that there's a shift coming, that there's a change that needs to be made. You know what I'm saying? Your soul is wanting you to identify, okay, this job doesn't make you feel excited anymore. It makes you feel drained. It makes you feel, you now feel burnout to the point that you're just like over it, and you no longer want to live in that way. So what are you going to do about it? What are the possible ways that we can change that? Whether that is looking for a whole new job entirely, whether it's you needing to find a different department to be around different people in a different space, different energy. Is it time for you to make a complete career shift and really figure out what is my purpose and my passion that I really want to align with, instead of climbing the corporate ladder? Another indicator of what identity loss looks like is not relating to the old habits anymore. And again, this can correlate to you feeling disconnected as well as outgrowing people, because in order for you to understand and realize that these old habits are no longer serving you anymore, you also feel disconnected from that version of yourself, as well as disconnected from maybe the different habits that other people around you you've been used to doing, like you've used to being exposed to, but they're just like, yeah, this ain't it no more. Like I can't be around this space no more. I need less of this. And you just naturally start to be more into solitude, and to start to develop a better relationship with yourself and what your internal self is asking you to look into. So I use myself as an example. So a few weeks ago, I found myself going back into a behavior that I know no longer serves me. But in that moment, I just naturally reverted back to an old habit that I know wasn't really going to benefit me. And I just was feeling shame and guilt and doubt for allowing myself to go in that negative spiral. Anyways, there was a time when I was in my lowest of lows before I really embarked on my self-love journey, before I started going to therapy and started doing my inner shadow work and healing work, that I would binge drink. I would binge drink, or I would just drink more than was necessary in order to numb my pain, to not feel the feelings I'm feeling. Even though I have gone through multiple phases of transitions and becoming different levels of different versions of myself, knowing that this no longer serves me, knowing this habit does not align with where I'm going, knowing it doesn't really honor the better version of myself that I have become, or that I am continuing to work through. And so I literally found myself drinking a whole bottle of tequila throughout a 4 or 5 day period. And I knew that was because at that moment I didn't have the capacity, or I did not want to feel the dark, the heavy feelings that were coming up to the surface, that I needed to identify, I needed to, accept, and I needed to just flow through me. I didn't want to feel that. I did not want to feel it. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to acknowledge it. I just wanted it to go away, and me to go back to it being in a space of, okay, let's keep getting it done. Let's keep taking one step forward at a time, aligning with our blueprint and our desired life and all that kind of stuff. And of course, yes, I did have my moments of feeling shame, being upset with myself, and beating myself up for doing something that I know is no longer and by doing something that I know is not in alignment with where I have been moving. But maybe there's a part of myself that thought that, oh, if you allow yourself to do this habit one more time, you'll feel better. You know what I'm saying? And no, that was not the case. That was not the reality. The only thing that it did was make me feel upset at myself for doing that, for allowing myself to not feel my feelings, knowing that I need to feel my feelings so that I can work through them, and so that they can, no longer have the power of control over my life and blocking me in whatever the way that they're blocking me. I also want to make this clear. When you are going through your different phases of transformation, whether you have identified who you are and know where you want to be, or you know that you need to be a different person, you will go through these phases multiple times in your journey. It's just not no one time that it happens. It's not a one-time thing that happens. It's like in the spiritual community when they say you're going to another dark night of the soul. You go through that one time, you think that's it, but baby, that's not it. Every time you choose to evolve, every time you choose to grow, every time you choose to elevate, you have to go through another transformational cycle. Just wanted that to be made clear. Moving on. And the last thing we're going to talk about in regards to what identity loss looks and feels like is feeling the in-between. So when you're in your in-betweens, basically like we've been saying, you know who you are, whether you have lost yourself or you're no longer fulfilled, you're no longer enjoying the path that you're currently on. And you've become aware that there is some old habits that you have outgrown. There are people that you have outgrown. There are spaces that you have disconnected with. There are patterns that are no longer in alignment with you, or no longer allow you to disassociate from you feeling maybe the heavier feelings in order for you to, work through them. And you're not fully integrated or fully comfortable or consistent with these different new habits that are that may be more in alignment with where you're trying to go. These are the different habits that you need to align with. Let's say, for example, if you want to become an entrepreneur and you've been an employee, there's a lot of different mindset shifts and there's a lot of different skill sets that you might have learned from your employee time, but it's so different when it comes to entrepreneurship, and you have to shift and change and outgrow and let go of how you did things as an employee and figure out what you could take with you on the entrepreneurship. But then there also has to shift and transform depending on whatever industry or whatever that looks like for you. So you are aware that maybe these are a few things I want to try and invest in to really better align with where I'm going, but you aren't fully committed there. You're like in the middle. You're right, you got one foot in the old version of yourself and one foot in the new version of yourself. That is the in between. And that's how you know that you are shifting, that you are aligning with a different version of, like, a better version of yourself, a newer version of yourself, and you're not who you used to be. You know what I'm saying? You know that you have been doing your work. You know that you have been starting to become more aware of who you are, some of the things that you might like, and the things that you might want to invest in, the things that you want to do. And you might have been trying to implement those things, but there might be some fears, there might be some doubts, there might be some blockages, there might be some resistance that's not allowing you to fully put both feet into that new version of yourself. So you're still teetering the line because of the uncomfortability that comes up with transformation and change, the uncertainty of knowing that if I take these risks on myself and embarking on entrepreneurship, will I even be successful? You know what I'm saying? Is it worth me leaving the comfortability of knowing that I can make $50K a year, and I'm going to the uncertainty of not knowing what I'll be consistently making? I don't have that same security that I did before. So here's the thing that we need to normalize in this experience of transformation. You experiencing identity loss does not mean that you're lost. It does not mean that you're lost. It can absolutely feel that way, but I feel like when people experience themselves hitting a rock bottom or in a space that they've never been in before, they can automatically associate that with being a bad thing. But what if I told you it's not a bad thing? What if I told you that means you're literally transforming? That means that you're literally changing. That means you're literally taking the steps forward in order to align with that new version of yourself. When you are moving into that new phase of yourself, when you're in the in-between, that phrase that people say you have to get comfortable with being comfortable comes into play when you are transforming, because your old your old habits, how your certain relationships were in the past, how you might have did things in the past, is comfortable to you. So when you try to do the same things that you've done before in the past, that you know have worked for you before, but they're not giving you the same results, and you feel defeated, that just means that you've got to make some shifts and some changes and do things differently to get a different result. You know what I'm saying? The definition of insanity is what? If we do the same things and expecting a different result, that's the definition of insanity. If we keep moving in the same way, thinking we're gonna get the same different result, like, that's not possible. That's not how that energy works. You gotta shift the energy in order to attract and align with different energies. It just is what it is. Just because you are not familiar or comfortable with the version of yourself that you are at this moment, it doesn't mean that you're lost. It just means that you are in the midst of transforming. So this brings me to my next point, which is the 3 different phases of transformation. We're briefly going to talk about them. The first phase of your transformation journey is the caterpillar version, the caterpillar phase. This was the version of you that was built on survival, conditioning, and external expectations. This is the version of yourself that, you know, you've been doing things the way that we were told to do, whether it was society, whether it's to please family members, seeking the external validation, living a life that the status quo says is what you need to follow, and going on that life so that you can have the American dream with the picket fence and the big house and the big tree and things of that nature, which we all know at this point is just hoopla. But that is basically the caterpillar version. This phase is basically who you have been up to this point in your life. This is the person that you know that you've been comfortable with, that you've been conditioned with to survive up to this point. Not saying that you have been allowing yourself to fully tap into your inner self, tap into your passions and things of that nature. The second phase, which is the cocoon phase, is basically the phase that we are in right now, the in-between, the figuring what is going on phase out, which is also the most uncomfortable, and also sometimes the phase that people decide to tap out in because of uncomfortability, and thinking that the uncomfortability means that they are doing something wrong when they're actually doing something right. This is the phase where you're starting to question your patterns. You're outgrowing people, you're outgrowing environment, you're outgrowing old habits, you're outgrowing old patterns that stopped feeling aligned with you. And your life can start to feel more emotionally messy. It seems like there's more chaos going on. It's not to say that the chaos is bad. It's just, again, something that is different to you. Your nervous system is not used to this version of yourself. This version of yourself, your nervous system is not used to you not identifying with these old habits, with, you know, how you have been operating. And so it can feel confusing. It can feel frustrating. And it's very valid for you to feel that, you know, something is wrong because it's new, it's uncomfortable, it's different. This is where we're having to develop the getting comfortable with being comfortable with being uncomfortable ideology. And the last phase of transformation is the butterfly phase. This is the phase where you begin to trust yourself more, where you're strongly setting those boundaries and you're sticking to those boundaries that you know that you need to align with in order to continue to be that version of yourself, that new version of yourself that is more so in alignment and more so resonating with who you are at the core of your soul. You started to move differently and you've been choosing yourself more consistently. You've been choosing to better align with what does Mercedes want? What type of life do I want to live? Not what family says, not what friends say, not what the job says, not what the world is saying. What do I want? And actually sitting with yourself and going through that process of identifying what your unique blueprint looks like for you so that you can make that inner transformation so that it can show up on the outside. So if you are interested in wanting to learn more about the in-between phase, learning more about the identity loss, and taking a deeper dive into these 3 different phases of transformation, I'm hosting a free webinar where I'll be breaking down the full transformation process, the different phases that people go through, why you might get stuck there, especially in the in-between phase, and what it actually takes to move forwardly more intentionally and better align with where you are going. If that is something that you're interested in, click on the link in my description down below for you to go ahead and sign up for that freebie so that you can gain more clarity and can get unstuck from the in-between phase. So until next time, you guys, stay blessed with peace, one love, high vibrations.